welcome to the podcast again. This is episode 2, and right off the top of the podcast, I want to say thank you so much if you've tweeted or retweeted or subscribed or commented or shared or any of that stuff. Really appreciate it. It's really, really cool. I'm glad that you're enjoying the podcast, and if there's anything that you want to know at all, you can just drop me a line on Facebook at facebook.com/JohnWDoylemusic, or drop an email to info@johnwdoyle.net. Or you can tweet me at John W. Doyle. So yeah, really, really appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done pushing the podcast and letting people know about it. It's fantastic, and I'll try and keep them coming. There was no podcast last week because I was in Ireland. And I had a great time. Thanks for asking. So yeah, it was all cool. Got to see Mum, got to play some diddly-dee Irish music. In fact, the music going along with those clips was me and the guys jamming in the pub, playing some traditional Irish stuff, which is always good for a giggle. You can hear that the crowd are pretty into it, so I like that sort of stuff. Same format as last week for the podcast. We're going to do a couple of questions that have come in off Facebook and through the email, and then I've got a couple of pre-prepared things that I want to do. There's quite a lot to fit in today, so I want to keep it quite fast-paced. So excuse me if I talk quick, but just try and keep up. You can always wind it back, as we used to say back in the day, and check it out. Question 1 was from Dave, and Dave wanted to know what kind of plectrums I use and recommend to my students. The plectrums I use and recommend are Jim Dunlop Jazz 3s. They are smaller than a regular pick, so I think they fit behind my thumb better with the right amount of pick sticking out when I'm holding it in the middle of my thumb. They're pretty rigid, so they don't flop about, which is nice for sort of speed playing and for powerful rhythm playing. I use it on acoustic as well most of the time. They also come in a few different flavours. There's the red ones, which are the most flexible of the jazz picks, I think anyway. Then there's the black one, which is called a stiffy, and that's a little bit more, or a stiff or something like that. You've got to love that. And that's a little bit more rigid, so that's a little bit better for maybe sort of metal playing and sort of bass playing. And then there's the carbon one, which is lightweight and invisible to radar, so that's amazing. They also do this thing called max grip, which is like a serrated, raised kind of edge, which just gives you a bit of grip when you're playing, which is great. So yeah, Jazz 3s, that's the way forward. I think they're better than a regular pick because of the size, and I find them really comfy. So buy them, use them, see if you like them. If you do, brilliant. If you don't, send them to me. I'm always losing them. So that's Jazz 3 plectrums for you. The next question was from Leon, and Leon wanted to know about strengthening his little finger. It's a common problem with guitar players in that most guitar players don't use a little finger. And I decided from quite early on in my playing that I wanted to use 4 fingers because all of my favourite players used 4 fingers. I didn't realise this until I've been playing for about 10 years, so I had to change my technique. And one of the things that I used to do that was the exercises that I'm about to show you. These exercises have come from a few different places, from different DVDs and different seminars and teachers and stuff over the years. So you might have seen some of this before, but it really works, and you know, I'd recommend that you do it. So the first thing to have a go at is a little massage for your arm. I think John Petrucci does this on one of his DVDs, where you just basically start up at your shoulder, give it a bit of a squish for say 10 seconds, then your bicep for 10 seconds, then your forearm for 10 seconds, then sort of squishing the fat of your hand, if you will, for 10 seconds, and then work your way up each finger for 10 seconds. And that, by the time you've done that, you'll feel a nice glow up your arm, and then you can start playing some basic chords and just warm up into the idea of doing any exercises. So the first lot of exercises that I've got are pretty simple. You're just going to use 4 fingers, sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, along the E string of the guitar. And so you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, using alternate picking with the plectrum, which means you're going down, then up, then down, then up. And you want the technique is more important than anything else, the posture, so that your hand is nice and flat on the bottom of the guitar, and then a nice curve on your fingers. So not too much bend in the wrist, but then a nice curve through your fingers, keeping your fingers parallel with the frets if you can manage that. So that's kind of the idea with this, and you just go through 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get to the 4th note, you can drop that first finger down so it's on the next string. So you synchronize this little switch there, and then you're on the next string warming up with that, and then there, and then you work your way all the way through, go all the way down the strings. When you get to the E string, you then work your way back up. It's about technique, it's about keeping your fingers close to the frets, and it's about not moving your fingers about too much and being relaxed while you're playing. So you warm up with that for a minute or so, and then when you've done that, you're going to do some hammer and pull exercises with each finger pair. So for example, we're going to go, first finger's going to be on the 5th fret of the A string, and then we're going to pick and hammer. So a hammer is thwacking, which is a great word, your finger down onto the string and making a new note. It's not a continuation of the first note, people seem to think it is, but it's not. So you pick, and then you thwack, there it is, and then you work that all the way down the strings, keeping the picking alternate again as before, so we're going to pick, hammer, all the way down, and all the way back up the strings. When you've done that and you're happy with that, do it as slow as you need to, don't rush, and then use your 2nd and 3rd finger, same deal. All the way down and up. When you've done that, use your 3rd and 4th finger. If you've never used your little finger, that'll be quite challenging. Then you've got 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 1 and 4, and just all the way down and all the way up. When you've gone through those and done them, then you do the same thing with a pull. So a pull is when you start with both fingers on, you pick and you flick. So that flick is a brand new note. It's not an existing note that we're continuing, it's a brand new note that we're making. So we pick and flick, and then we do that all the way down the strings. All the way back up again. Same for the 2nd and 3rd, same for the 3rd and 4th, 1st and 3rd, 2nd and 4th, etc. And the last thing that I finish off with after those exercises is trills. So I will do this, I will go like on the 1st and 2nd finger, I'll pick on the E string, and then just keep that going on, a bit Mission Impossible, and then the 2nd and 3rd, 3rd and 4th, 1st and 3rd, 2nd and 4th, and 1st and 4th. And that's a nice little exercise. What I would suggest is as well, if you're doing these as like a little set exercise like that, if your little finger's the weakest one, maybe double up. So maybe do 3 times on, say, 3 and 4, twice on 2 and 3, and once on 1 and 2, so that you're doing more work on the little finger side. And don't forget, if you feel pain when you're playing at any time, you stop. Okay? There's none of this sort of playing through the pain barrier and no pain, no gain. That's all nonsense. If something hurts, you stop. Be prepared for your fingertips to get raw. That's not really pain, that's just raw fingers. And you'll feel a little bit of a kind of a, not a burn, but you'll feel a little bit of ache in your forearm. That again really isn't pain, but a sharp pain or anything that's really sore, you think, oh, that hurts, then, you know, stop straight away. And do keep your wrist nice and straight when you're playing, really important. So that's the finger exercises. They should get you moving and get your little finger going. I did these every day for a year when I was building my technique up. I used to do 20 minutes or so of scales and exercises like that. Really, really helps. So that's that. Okay, so next we have some music theory. Music theory kills guitar players. Guitarists tend to hate it. That's a very broad sweeping statement, but I probably taught over 1,000 guitar players, and theory and guitar players don't really go together very well. And the reason why is because it's taught very badly. It's not taught in a way that engages guitarists. It's taught with language which is hundreds of years old and in a foreign language. And it's not particularly interesting, but it's super useful. And so I'm going to try and make it a little bit more palatable over the next few podcasts and give you some useful theory, give you an insight into how I use theory to make the stuff I play sound more interesting, use it as a writing tool, and just generally, you know, like theory because it's good fun. The place that theory has to start, though, which a lot of people don't realise, is you've got to know what your notes are called. You know, so many guys come to me for lessons and don't know what the notes are called, and it's a little bit disturbing, to be honest with you, because that's where you've got to start. You wouldn't try and learn grammar without knowing your alphabet, or without, you know, you just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't make any sense. So same with music. Now, the musical alphabet and the English alphabet are quite similar. The musical alphabet goes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, which are the white notes on the piano. But then it has the black notes on the piano, which are called sharps and flats. And it's a really simple idea. The sharps and flats are basically between some of the white notes, which are the natural notes, the ones with the letter names. So, for example, between A and B, there's a little black note, and you can call that black note A sharp, which is higher than A, or you can call it B flat, which is lower than B. You don't ever call it both of those things at the same time. You'll choose one and stick to it. And there's certain notes that you're going to call flats more than you're going to call sharps, like B flat and E flat always get called flats, or nearly always get called flats. For today's purposes, we're going to call everything sharp. And I'm going to teach you the order that the musical alphabet goes in so that you can recite it without having a piano there, because not everyone's got a piano. And even piano players a lot of the time that I've taught guys that play piano, sometimes they can't recite the order that the notes go in without having a piano there. And that's not their fault. When you play a piano, there's always a piano, you know. So the musical alphabet goes like this. It's pretty simple. If you remember the order, B goes straight onto C. There's no sharp between B and C. And E goes straight onto F. There's no sharp between E and F. So I tell my students to visualize a bumblebee and have a big fat bumblebee with a t-shirt on with B written on, and then the bumblebee's got a cork on its stinger. And this might sound really weird, but it's a good way of visualizing the information that you need. So the notes that don't have sharps, not having a sharp is represented by the cork, are written on the t-shirt, B and E. Okay? So B doesn't have a sharp, E doesn't have a sharp. So if you remember that, then you can work through the alphabet reasonably well. Starting from A, we have A sharp, because everything has a sharp apart from the ones on the B. Okay? B doesn't have a sharp, so straight onto C. C sharp, D sharp, E doesn't have a sharp, so straight onto F sharp, G sharp, that's 12, and then we're back to A. So that is the musical alphabet, also known as the musical register or the chromatic scale. It's got a few different names, but it's all the same thing. It's just that all the notes on the piano going through every single note. So that's the musical alphabet. The bumblebee thing sounds weird. It really works. It helps you remember it at the beginning. You'll not think about that in a couple of weeks when you just know that B goes straight onto C and E goes straight onto F. But for now, it's a good little aid to memory. So now we're going to put that on the guitar. If we start with the, if you don't know what the strings are called on the guitar, by the way, they are E, A, D, G, B, E. Elephants and donkeys grow big ears. Don't tell anybody about elephants and donkeys grow big ears. It's not very rock and roll. Nobody will understand. But it's a good way of remembering what your strings are called. And because there's two E strings, elephants are bigger than ears, usually, so elephants is the thickest string, okay? I like these little aid to memories. I think they come in really handy. So if we play the E string, if we play this, that's E. The first fret on the E string is going to be the next note in the sequence, in the musical alphabet. So the next note in the musical sequence after E, if you remember, say it to yourself now, it's F. Did you get it right? If you didn't, go back over the order and, you know, see how you go, or just follow on and see if you pick it up. So F's the first fret, F sharp's next, G's after that, then G sharp, then A sharp, then B goes straight onto C, because there's no sharp, and C sharp, D sharp, and finally E. Now E's at the 12th fret. The 12th fret is denoted by a big marker or a double dot marker. On the side you might have a double dot, depending on what guitar you've got. And you know that you've got it right if you've got the 12th fret the same as the open string. So work through that a few times on each string, the E string, the A string and the D string, count it through. The A string, by the way, just for being complete, the A string is A sharp, B, straight onto C, C sharp, D sharp, E, straight onto F sharp, G sharp and A, and again we're starting on the A string, we're on A at the 12th fret, and then the D string will be D sharp, E, straight onto F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, straight onto C sharp and D. Now what I recommend that you learn as a guitarist is your E string, your A string and your D string on the dots. So you memorise what the notes are on the 3rd, 5th, 7th and 9th fret to start with. If you're a bass player, the strings for the bass and the guitar are exactly the same. The first 4 strings on the bass is E, A, D and G, same as the guitar. So you can learn the first 4 strings on the bass because you've only got 4 strings to learn. You might as well get them all done and get them out of the way. And memorising the notes on the dots will be really, really handy. If you play power chords on the guitar, you can test yourself by going like G, and then maybe move your power chord to A. So the first finger of the power chord, whatever note that's on, that's the name of the power chord. So that's a G5 or a G power chord, that's an A5 or an A power chord, C, D, etc. So you can move those around and test yourself. But the main thing is that you get those notes down. And then next time we'll do a little bit more theory, but we'll start with learning what the notes are. If you know this already, just use this week as a revision. Go back over them, get them sweet, and make sure you can count through the alphabet in that way. So that's notes. Okay, so next we've got some scales. John, I think, on Facebook mentioned that it'd be a good idea to do some scales that people can improvise with. So next we've got some scales. John on Facebook mentioned it'd be a good idea to do some scales that people can improvise with and solo with, which is a really good call. And I have 4 scales that I teach to all the guys that I teach right off the top. The first 4 scales that I always go to, because I think if you can get these 4 scales down, you can play most solos in most styles, if you will. Not most solos, like really complicated stuff. But if you wanted to do a blues solo or a metal solo or a rock solo or a jazz solo, you'd have enough tools to do something in that style. And I think that's important to have something that you can play pretty much straight away as a musician. So I'm going to go through all of these. There's a worksheet, and the backing tracks I'm going to use in a little while are all below this video on the website. And if you're not on the website and you're on YouTube, down there's a link to the website, and then below this video on the website is the link to the worksheets, which has got scale diagrams and tab. So I'm not going to go through these super slow, because you can work through them on your own through the worksheets if you need to. So the first one we've got is the minor pentatonic. All of these are starting from the A note on the E string on the 5th fret. So this is the A minor pentatonic. I'm alternate picking throughout when I do this, by the way. That's the A minor pentatonic. Notice the fingers near enough parallel with the strings, wrist nice and straight. Okay, so you're after that posture wherever you can, and not too much flap from the fingers. Use all 4 fingers as well, okay? So that's the A minor pentatonic. Next one's the A minor blues, but adding a couple of notes to that A minor pentatonic to get the A minor blues scale. So that goes like this. Still alternate picking. That's the A minor blues. Next we've got the A natural minor. Now this one's a little bit different, because the A minor blues and pentatonic both only cover 4 frets. This one covers 5, and we have a little thing called a pivot. And a pivot's like a little crab walk that you do with your fingers just to move. You'll spot it in the when I play it, and you'll see it on the scale sheet as well. So here we go. This is the A natural minor. Here comes the pivot. The little finger's coming in, and now the first finger jumps out, and the first finger creeps back. That's the pivot. So that's the A natural minor. And then the A Dorian is the last one. And that's again starting from A. Same thing, got a little bit of a pivot. The pivot's a string early on this one, so watch out for the pivot. Here we go. A Dorian. Here's the pivot, little finger, first finger, and then the first finger sneaks back in here. Still alternate picking. Little finger. First finger comes in, little finger's out. And that's the A Dorian. So those 4 scales are super useful. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick on I've got some backing tracks that you can download just below this video again. I'm going to put one of those on. I'm going to show you a few of the things that you can do with those scales. There's one really useful thing that I'm going to do quite a bit of called turnarounds, or I call them turnarounds. And it's like the thing they used to do in the gym at school. I don't know if you had an evil PE teacher like I did, but they'd make you run to like the first line on the court, and then the net back, and the next line and back, and the next line and back, and you get to the end and be sick or something like that. And you can do this on guitar without the sick bit. So you can basically play through, say, the scale, and then turn around at the end of this line, back to the beginning, and then turn around at the end of the next line, and back to the beginning, and at the end of the next line. You get these turnarounds going on. So I use these a lot. If you see me changing direction within the scale, I'm probably doing a turnaround. I'm going to throw a load of other stuff in as well. I'm not going to use anything that's not in those scales. I'm just going to use some vibrato, maybe some bends, some slides, and stuff that I've not shown you yet. But I just want to show you what you can do with these scales without being too sort of clever. This is the bit that one of my students refers to as me showing off. So sorry, dude, but a bit of showing off's coming up. Okay, so I'm going to fire up a backing track, and then you can hopefully have a listen and see what you think. Okay, so here's what you can do with the pentatonic. Now the blues. Now better than natural minor. You can always mix the blues scale in with either of these, by the way, with the natural minor or the Dorian. So I'll put a little bit of blues in there. Now I'm going to change the backing track because the other backing track on here is for the Dorian. The Dorian needs its own backing track, and you'll hear why when you hear it. It's got a major chord in there instead of a D minor chord. There's a D major chord or a D7 chord. So a little bit of the Dorian now. Put a bit of blues in there as well. Remember the blues run from last week, we can put that in, so. So that's a few of the ideas that you can do with those scales. I want to stress that you're not supposed to try and play that fast and with all those bits and pieces right at the beginning. If you can put some of that stuff in, that's great. I just want to show you, one of the problems I always had with guitar teachers telling me stuff that I needed to learn was they'd say you've got to learn these scales, but then they'd never say why. They'd never show me exactly why. So I want you to understand what those are for, what those scales are going to do for you. You can play all of that kind of stuff. There's loads of other stuff that you can play as well. You can do shredding with those scales. You can play rock and metal solos. You can do all sorts of stuff. So they're my first go-to scales. If I'm, at a jam night and I'm doing a solo, there's a good chance it's going to fall within those parameters a lot of the time. And a lot of the stuff in there I haven't shown you yet. Bends, slides, vibrato, hammers and pulls, all those kind of things. But I will. We will get around to doing those. And you've got to know the scales first. You've got to know what your notes are called. You've got to know your scales. And if you can get the alternate picking going on, start using all four fingers and you'll see really good things happen to your playing. So that pretty much wraps up the podcast. Once again, I want to say thank you very much for everyone who's been supportive and anyone who's shared or done any of the tweeting or any of that stuff. If you have any questions, you can send an email to info@johnwdoyle.net. You can check out facebook.com/John W. Doyle Music. You can tweet me at John W. Doyle. So, there's lots of options for you there if you want to get in touch. Please keep your questions coming in and, keep your comments sort of firing off and what have you. And once again, thank you very much for supporting the podcast. This podcast is over. I will see you next week. Take it easy.